The Underground Railroad was a huge network of people and safe houses used by American slaves escaping to the North between 1810 and 1865. Over 100,000 slaves escaped during this time. The first record of the Underground Railroad was in 1786 when George Washington complained about how one of his runaways was assisted by a group of Quakers formed for this purpose. The railroad grew and by 1831 had earned its name, the Underground Railroad. Slavery had been in North America for over 300 years when the railroad was founded. The first slaves were brought to America in 1526 by the Spanish to what is now Georgia. In 1619, 100 Africans were shipped to Jamestown, but only 20 survived the trip. By the late 18th century, there were over 600,000 slaves in the United States. The Underground Railroad was not underground, nor was it a railroad. The term was used figuratively. The railroad itself was a group of safe houses, known as stations, in the southern United States, that fugitive slaves used on their journey north. There were also conductors on the railroad that would guide slaves to freedom. One of the most famous conductors on the Underground Railroad is Harriet Tubman. Harriet was a slave born in 1822 Maryland. As a child, Harriet suffered a head injury caused by a weight being thrown on her head. She later said that her thick hair that had never been combed, that stood out like a bushel basket, saved her life. In 1849, Harriet and her two brothers, Ben and Harry, escaped for the first time. Their master didn't notice they had escaped for 2 weeks, at which point her brothers had second thoughts and forced Harriet back. Soon after they escaped, Harriet escaped again, but without her brothers. She was successful, and in 1850, she returned for her family, the first of many trips back to the South. Over the next 11 years, she earned the nickname Moses and rescued over 300 slaves. She died at age 91. The slaves traveled at night and slept at stations during the day. The conductor led them from station to station and would send messages to the next stop and alert the next station master of their arrival. The stations were often located in barns, under church floors, or hiding places in hollowed out and carved out riverbanks. Ever so often, a runaway would escape on a boat or train, but most walked on foot or rode under tarps in the backs of wagons. Most conductors would take 1 or 3 slaves at a time, but Charles Turner Torrey took 15 or 20. Charles Turner Torrey is an abolitionist from Massachusetts. Until recently, Torrey has been lost to history, but it has been discovered that he might quite possibly be the most successful conductor on the Underground Railroad. Around 1841, Torrey moved to D.C. as a reporter for several abolitionist newspapers. He befriended an abolitionist Congress member and began to formulate a plan to free slaves. Torrey and a group of friends would rent horses and wagons and would load them up with runaway slaves in the middle of the night. He specifically targeted the plantations of Congress members so as to cause as much disruption as possible. He died in prison in 1846, only 2 years into his 6-year sentence. The Underground Railroad helped runaway slaves from 1810 until the Civil War ended in 1865. It freed over 100,000 slaves from their masters.